Flash floods are quick floodings of low-lying areas. They are typically caused by heavy rains, but can also be the result of melted water from ice or snow. Sometimes they are caused by faults in human-made structures, such as the deadly 1889 Johnstown flood in America. That flood occurred when the South Fork Dam broke under the strain of several heavy rainstorms, sending a sudden gush of 20 million tons of water into the Jonestown area below the dam. The influx of water was so great that some have said it matched the Mississippi River. The flood claimed over 2,000 lives. A different type of flash flood was the Great Molasses Flood. This occurred when a massive container filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses ruptured. The vessel was too thin to contain that amount of liquid, and fluctuating air temperatures made the container too brittle at low temperatures for storing large amounts of thick liquid. Engineers should have known better at the time, but the tank had been built rapidly to accommodate the rising demand for alcohol, which can be distilled from molasses. When the tank ruptured, the molasses forcefully gushed out into the streets, trapping horses, crushing buildings, injuring 150 people and killing 21 others. Decades after the flood, residents could still smell the molasses, especially on hotter days of the year. Here we look at 5 terrifying flash floods that were caught on camera, demonstrating just how deadly they can be. The 2010 flash flood in Pakistan. In 2010, monsoon rains began to fall in the north of Pakistan. These were unusually heavy for Pakistan, whose monsoons are typically less intense than those of India and Bangladesh. However, in 2010, the rains continued for weeks, causing the rivers to rise rapidly, causing flooding of the Indus River basin, which flows through Pakistan. As the water surplus edged south, the southern provinces became waterlogged. This put massive pressure on a dam located in the Singh, and when it burst, the water gushed over large parts of the countryside. Although the build-up to the floodings and the floods themselves were relatively quick events, the resulting flood water subsided much more slowly than it had arrived, meaning all kinds of establishments, such as houses, plantations, and even whole towns remained underwater. Very little could be done except to wait for the water to evaporate. Millions were affected by the unexpected flood, and tragically, almost 2,000 people were killed. It's easily among one of the worst flash floods in history. Take a look at this terrifying footage. The 2012 Krasnodar Krai floods. Months of heavy rains began to fall into the south of Russia before early July 2012. Officials in Russia said that the rain sent massive floods through the south, particularly in Krimsk, but the people affected directly by the flooding believe something more sinister. The water arrived with such force and speed that officials most likely opened the gates of a local reservoir, choosing to flood the Krimsk region to spare a port named Novorossiysk, a place whose main facilities are owned by allies of the country's President Putin. The residents of the area say that they were given no warning about the floods and therefore had no time to prepare themselves. Although prosecutors eventually admitted that the gates had been opened, there is not enough information to tell whether this was a deliberate act to spare a port. Activists who disapprove of the president rallied together to send help of their own, and many blame Putin for the disaster and the lives claimed by the flash flood. Over 150 died, and many of the dead were elderly residents unable to escape.
Аккуратно, аккуратно. Только пропусти.
The 2013 Argentina flash flood. In early April, the north of Buenos Aires began to experience heavy storms and rains. The rains grew so severe that over 12 inches of rain fell on the region in only a few hours. The city almost never experiences more than 4 inches of rain throughout the whole of April. The rains triggered severe flash floods and massive power outages. 250,000 people had to go without electricity for an extended period of time. Some people spent the night on the roofs of their own homes, hoping for rescue. People had to wade through waist-high waters, and many of their cars were completely underwater. Take a look at this footage.
Ay, Dios mío, se está llevando a la casita, mira.
Sí, completa la sacó la casa. Completa, mira.
Virgen del Valle, Señor, que calme esto.
Mira ahí, se ve la mano que está ahí adentro. Mira esa casita de él.
Cállate, vení.
In the aftermath of the floods, top officials started squabbling, with the planning minister, Julio De Vito, blaming the head of Buenos Aires, saying that he knew of a dangerous storm and had failed to respond in a way that would prevent destruction. The head of Buenos Aires blamed the national government for using resources that could have been used for the city. None of this was helpful, as ultimately the flooding caused over 100 fatalities. The 2009 southeastern United States flash floods. Although this flash flood was fortunately far less destructive than the former floods mentioned, in that it only claimed 10 lives, the floods were so massive that they set a new record in the region. Rains began to fall in Atlanta for several days, made worse by moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. At first the rain was mild, but progressively severe storms began to overload the local watersheds. Intense flash flooding followed, and $500 million of damage was done in Georgia. Take a look at the footage.
Come here, Louis. Hey, get over here. Stay out of that water. That's nasty, buddy.
The damage included that done to areas around Georgia that were also affected. Many creeks and rivers stayed swollen with flood water for several weeks. School buses were flipped over, and most of the fatalities that occurred were of people who were driving as the flash flood hit the region. The cleanup and repair process took several months. The Colorado flash flood of 2013. During early September 2013, heavy rainfall began to saturate the grounds in northern Colorado. The streets began to flood, and humid air moving over the area helped to trigger heavy storms, and high pressure from the east moved against low pressure from the west, fueling several days of the storms. On September the 10th, the Boulder region recorded 1 inch of water. The next day, 2 inches fell. and on the 12th day, the same region recorded a little over 9 inches of rain. More rain followed, and water poured from the mountainsides into Boulder Creek and other parts of the South Platte River. The water travelled over some distance and made a speedy appearance, resulting in 6 deaths. Take a look at some footage.
It's fun. I just go past the Briar, and there's nothing down there. The river's not even. It's not.
At the time, over 200 were unaccounted, but thankfully after the water subsided, they were found safe and well. Thousands of homes were damaged, and a few thousand were completely destroyed. Roads were washed out, which complicated people's ability to provide emergency services. The footage from this event truly shows how destructive water can be. So that's 5 incredibly scary flash floods caught on camera, reminding us once again that Mother Nature will spare no one. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.